What happens when we start to trust code more than we trust people? When an algorithm, not a person, not a bank, becomes the final word on things? Well, we're going to dive into that because it's not some far-off sci-fi idea. It is happening right now.
I mean, really think about that for a second. What would that even look like? No big banks, no headquarters, no tellers. Just a global money system that's open to literally anyone, anywhere on the planet.
Right. It's a system where all the rules are out in the open and everything just happens automatically. So your trust isn't in some CEO who could make a mistake, but in the cold, hard certainty of math.
And that right there is the huge promise of what we're calling algorithmic authority. The idea is we can swap out our messy human systems for perfect automated code. But, and this is a big but, the reality? It's way more complicated and honestly, way more interesting.
Okay, so to really get what's so revolutionary about this new stuff, we gotta first look at the old system. What's holding up the financial world we live in right now? So I'll ask you, who do you trust with your money? For most of us, the answer is a bank, right? But why? It's because you trust that if you put your money in, it's going to be there tomorrow. You trust their computers, their security guards, the fact that they follow the law. All of that trust, it's all based on their authority.
And this classic definition from way back in 1922 really nails it. We listen to a bank's authority not because they're holding a gun to our heads, but because we believe it's legitimate. It's built on rules we can understand and this promise that it'll all just work efficiently. And that right there is the exact foundation that some of these new technologies are aiming to completely rip out and replace.
Which, of course, brings us to the most famous or maybe infamous example of this whole revolution, Bitcoin. From day one, it was built to be a money system that didn't need any of that traditional authority we just talked about.
See, at its core, Bitcoin is run by algorithms. And an algorithm isn't just a bunch of sleepy code sitting on a server. No, it's designed to do things. It's logic plus control, a set of instructions that's always busy, always carrying out tasks.
And the most famous algorithm in Bitcoin? Well, that's the blockchain. The easiest way to think about it is like a giant public digital receipt book that everyone can see and that can never be erased. It's what checks every transaction and makes new currency, all on its own, with no bank or government looking over its shoulder. So here's the key takeaway, right? The big idea from the Bitcoin crowd is that the system's authority comes from the code itself. You don't have to trust any person because you can just trust the math. That's the dream of algorithmic authority in a nutshell, a perfect utopia run by code. But is it really that simple?
Well, this is where the story takes a really interesting turn. Because it turns out you can't ever really separate the code from the people who write it, the people who run it, and the people who use it. And this quote really points to the big crack in that perfect utopian vision. Algorithms look like they're automatic and all-powerful, but in reality, we, the users, are always in the middle of it. We have to interpret things, make decisions. We're always in the loop, and our choices change how the system actually works.
Yeah, because behind all that elegant code, there's a whole messy network of actual people. Bitcoin isn't just an algorithm. Researchers have this fancy term for it, a socio-technical assemblage. All that means is it's a system where the tech and the people are totally tangled up together. You've got developers writing the code, miners processing the transactions, users trying to figure out who to trust, and even regulators making laws about it. At the end of the day, it's a deeply, deeply human system.
Okay, so if the code is always shaped by people, then what happens if you build something with a completely different human goal in mind? So let's pivot for a second. We're going to go from the massive global scale of Bitcoin all the way to a small community in Kenya. And what we find there is pretty amazing.
Because this question changes everything. What if the goal isn't to take down the global banking system, but just to help out your neighbor? The underlying tech might look kind of similar, but the purpose, the human reason for building it, leads to something completely different.
So let me introduce you to Serafu. It's a digital community currency. Now, this was never about replacing the dollar or becoming a global powerhouse. No, its goal was way more focused. To help people in communities where cash is tight to trade with each other. It's all about keeping value moving right there locally.
The real test of any system, any idea, is how it does when things get tough. And back in 2020, Serafu, it faced the ultimate test.
Because when the COVID-19 pandemic hit,
and the normal supply chain started to break down, the use of Sarafu just exploded. We're talking transaction volumes shooting up 10 times higher than they were before. It was incredible. As the big official system started to crack, the community turned to their own system to get by.
And what were they buying with it? This is the amazing part. It wasn't for speculation or trying to get rich quick. Nope. They were buying the absolute essentials: food, paying for labor, healthcare, water, farming supplies. This was never about wealth. It was a tool for survival.
So what do we learn when we put these two stories, Bitcoin and Sarafu, right next to each other? I think the lesson here is it's a big one.
See, the technology itself, this idea of a digital ledger, it's neutral. It doesn't have an opinion, but it acts like a mirror. It just reflects the values of the people who build it. Bitcoin, its goal was to disrupt global institutions. Its trust model was all about the code. And what did it become? A global speculative asset. Sarafu, its goal was to support a local community. Its trust model was based on the relationships people already had, and it became a local lifeline. Same tech, totally different world.
Which leaves us with one last really big question. We know that code is becoming a new kind of authority. That's happening. So as we're building these tools that are literally going to shape our future, the choice is really up to us. Are we going to build a world that runs on pure abstract logic, or are we going to build one that reinforces the human connections that actually hold us all together?